Hi, everyone. I hope you enjoyed your lunch and are now moving your way towards dessert. So the next portion of the program is special for me. I have had an incredible opportunity at the University of Michigan to work with a lot of fabulous researchers, but I think when we can take research and medical research to its highest form of translation, and that's the arts, that's when we really know that we are leveraging the full breadth of our campus. This was a poorly formed idea that came up a couple years ago as I was returning from Grand Rapids at a development event where I had seen some of our students from the School of Music, Theater, and Dance perform, and not long before that I had spoken to a local high school. And while I'm passionate about going into high schools and middle schools and teaching them about the risks of opioids and the importance of not abusing opioids, I realized, old man Brummett can't go into high schools and teach kids about risk. And it was in that moment of driving home, I had this aha moment to say, we have fabulous students and incredible creativity in our School of Music, Theater, and Dance. And I reached out to Vincent Cardinal and Priscilla Lindsay, and they enthusiastically replied and said, we just really need some stories. We need to understand what's happening. And so in partnership with the Families Against Narcotics, we had five individuals come in and tell their stories. A couple of people who have been down the road of opioid use disorder and heroin, a couple of parents who have lost children to overdose. And they told their stories, and within 24 hours, I got a song in my email box. And then another song, and then another song, and now we actually have a fully orchestrated musical. Jacob Smith, who you're going to see perform today, actually has fully put this to paper. We now have a 1,000-page musical that is now being orchestrated with vocals planned. So I want to introduce this group and talk about what's so special about today, because while we've performed this music before, we've never done so with the story preceding. So I'm going to first introduce Jacob Brian Smith. He is a rising senior at the University of Michigan, working towards his BFA in musical theater. Along with Painless, the opioid musical, Jacob has spent years writing for musical theater. He's worked on 3 full book musicals, Mr. Sipple, Book of Music and Lyrics, Like Dying Things Do, music, Midnight Channel, the musical, a song cycle, and a short film that's in production, John Comes Home, where he did the screenplay, music, and lyrics, and multiple pop songs on YouTube, so you can Google him on YouTube. He is currently working on creating cast albums for The Outs and Ins, a study of the ineffable, and Painless, the musical, which you'll hear from today. His work on Mr. Sipple was a 2019 semifinalist for the O'Neill's Music Theater Conference, and Jacob is incredibly proud of the opioid musical and hopes that this message can educate and inspire a new generation to help overcome this crisis. And I met with Jacob just this week to kind of start thinking through all the next steps that we need to do to actualize this, and his passion just comes through. Performing with Jacob today will be Emma Ashford. Emma is a rising senior as well in the School of, pursuing a BFA in musical theater from the University of Michigan. Last appeared as Joanna in Sweeney Todd. Ashford is also a writer and director, and currently directing an Ann Arbor concert production of Beauty and the Beast, and is working on her first album now. And now it gives me great pleasure to introduce David Clayton, who is the outreach coordinator for Families Against Narcotics. Mr. Clayton is a person in long-term recovery from drugs and alcohol. He is currently the outreach coordinator for Families Against Narcotics and has had the opportunity to spread awareness on addiction, prevention, and recovery across the state into drug courts, hospitals, and local news, medical conferences, and high schools, all the way around up to the collegiate and university level. He assists in running the Dillon Recovery Homes, a successful, sober, and structured living environment. He is also the director of for the Macomb County Anti-Human Trafficking Task Force, certainly an area where we see an interrelationship between human trafficking and opioids, vice president for Macomb County Adult Drug Court at nonprofit, and on the board of My Care Health Center, where he has been involved in getting their MAT program up and running, and giving people a chance for recovery. And so, David, it gives me such pleasure to introduce you today, and I want to really thank you for your courage and your willingness to come here and share a deeply personal story. Thanks.
Wow, thank you so much, Dr. Brummett. And to find the words of gratitude to be here today is, I struggled with that. I was thinking the whole time of what I was going to say and how I was going to say what an absolute honor it is to be a part of such an amazing group of speakers. Because as you've seen in a lot of the slides and before I came up here, is statistics and medically backed research state that I shouldn't be here today, that I should be incarcerated or dead. And the fact that I'm not is, it speaks volumes. And, when I think about it, 6 years ago, I was a 28-year-old strung out on heroin, methamphetamine, and alcohol, living in a rusted minivan. And, and life wasn't always like that for me. And the fact that I don't fit the stereotypical stigmatized description of what a drug addict or an alcoholic is supposed to look like kept me sick for a very long time. And to really get my full story in the allotted time, I'm going to kind of speed through a lot of things and let you know how I got to where I'm at today. As a youth growing up, I grew up in a loving household, a household in which addiction or alcoholism does not run in. And I had dreams and aspirations just like any other kid growing up. I wanted to be something in life. And it wasn't until the age of, after I graduated high school, I excelled in high school. I was an athlete. And 18 years old is when I became addicted to prescription painkillers. And I found that love that I had for these prescription painkillers. And I never knew I had a problem until I tried stopping, and that's when I knew I had a problem. The excessive amounts of these prescription opiates that I was taking was a lot, and my story is not unique compared to anybody else who goes down the road of drug addiction, specifically opiate addiction. But I knew that I liked to drink, and I knew that I liked to take prescription painkillers. So I was doing the behaviors that come along with that. Doctor shopping was a main part of what I was doing, and then once all 5 of my doctors found out, because they ran maps on me, I was cut off. And then it was 19, 20 years old, I was introduced to Oxycontin. And, I never thought that by taking a pill that was prescribed by a doctor was anything harmful to me, even the excessive amounts that I was taking it at. But when I found out that I could crush them up and sniff them is when it really got a grip on me. 21 years old is when I had been estranged from my family at this time with the criminal activity that involves opiate addiction and drug addiction. And then it was 21 years old is when I finally sniffed heroin for the first time, all because I didn't want to feel sick anymore. Those horrendous withdrawals that I was going to, I was willing to do anything, and and it was heroin that I sniffed at 21, and then becoming increasingly tolerant to that. It was 24 years old is when I became an intravenous drug user. When I was I had come off 2 overdoses in 3 days of being dropped off at the front doorsteps of an area hospital right outside the ER. And Narcan was obviously administered on me. But at that time, I didn't look as Narcan was saving my life. It stole my high. And both times, I checked out against medical advice. And living on the streets was getting increasingly difficult, and then I finally called my mom and I begged my mom for help. It had been a while since I talked to my mom at that time, and I said, "Mom, you got to help me." And she said, "You need to figure it out yourself. I've done everything that I can do. I can't do anything else for you." And I had been incarcerated so often and in and out of treatment centers. And I said, Mom, you don't understand. I'm cold and I'm hungry. I have nowhere to go. And I begged and I begged and I begged. And finally she said, the only thing I will do for you is I will drive you door to door directly back to rehab. You're not living in my house. And I said, all right, I'll go. I need to go. And then, so I get to her house, and it had been, 12 hours since I last drank anything, and 3 hours since I last used any heroin. And so I started shaking from the alcohol withdrawals and getting really sick from the heroin withdrawals. And I knew that I had 4 hours until I was entered treatment. 4 hours felt like 4 years. And I knew that I just needed one more, just to get me through to get into treatment. So what I started doing is I started going through all of the rooms in her basement that she'd keep things in, looking for something to steal. Anything of worth of value. Drugs or liquor. My mom never kept any of that in the house, and anything that she had that was valuable was most likely already taken. So I'm underneath her stairs, and I'm looking through these boxes, and I find this box that's got my name on it. And I open it up, and it was everything, all my belongings that she had packed up from my room. There's all my pictures, and my jersey was framed, and I was finding all my old books that I used to keep, and I would hollow out the inside of my books, and I would keep all my drug paraphernalia in there. So I'm finding old pill bottles and baggies, and I'm licking these baggies and licking these bottles just to try to get something just so I couldn't have to feel sick. Like complete and utter desperation. And then at the bottom of this box, I find a book that didn't belong to me, and I opened it up, and I was confused because it was like a blank book, that you write in, like a guest book. And then, so I throw that to the side, and I find this other little box underneath it, and I open it up, and I noticed that there was prayer cards in it. And when I looked at these prayer cards, the first thing I noticed was that my picture was on them with my birth date and a prayer, but there was no death date filled in. And then, and then I quickly realized that my mom had planned out my funeral. So after that, I proceeded to crawl out of the basement window, and I went right back to the city. And I could not stop. I could not stop. Which brings me to September 23rd of 2013. I was severely addicted to heroin, methamphetamine, and alcohol, and I just wanted to die. I was on a suicide mission. And my plan on September 23rd of 2013 was to end my life. I hated everything that I had become. I had no friends, I had no family, and I was full of self-hate at that time. And my plan was I was going to overdose myself. And before I could get to doing that, I ended up getting arrested. I had an active warrant for my arrest for the criminal activity that follows, and I find myself back in a jail cell. Facing heavy guidelines in a state penitentiary. I'm in court, and the judge says, David, what happened to you? And I said, well, allegedly they said I broke into a house. And he said, I'm not talking about this. He said, I'm talking about you. He said, from the time that you've been 18 and now you're 28 years old, you can't stay out of trouble, and you can't successfully complete probation. The prosecuting attorney is then telling Your Honor, this man's a hopeless, helpless drug addict, and incarceration is the best option for him. So then I started getting in an argument with the prosecuting attorney, which is highly frowned upon in the court of law. And I said, you're wrong. I said, I need help. I said, sending me to prison is not going to help me. I need help. And that's when instead of being sentenced to the Michigan Department of Corrections, I was sentenced to drug court. So now I had to enter treatment again for the 5th time, and I completed it in the days that I was to be there, 21 days. And I get out, nowhere to go, no family, no friends, and I moved into a sober living house. That sober living house, in turn, then saved my life. I was able to graduate that drug court, and the court mandated a minimum of 21 months. I now sit on as the vice president of that drug court. And I look at it as September 23rd of 2013 was the day that I wanted to end my life. What I really wanted was I wanted to end that moment of my life. And what I thought was my life falling apart was really in turn just falling into place, and I didn't even know it. Because September 23rd of 2013 was the last day that I had to use drugs and alcohol. It was the last day that drugs and alcohol told me when to wake up and when to steal when to go to sleep. And as a direct result of that, I've been able to do a lot of amazing things today, and this is one of them. I always think to myself that this is where I'm supposed to be. I thought that when I was speaking in my first high school of 30 kids, 5 years ago. And, I got involved with Families Against Narcotics. Now I'm their outreach coordinator, and I get to travel the state and raise all this awareness, and, and it's only through extreme gratitude that I'm able to do that today. I have a great relationship with my mother. She wished that she could be here today. She's super proud of me. I'm a homeowner and all these great things that have come along with the blessings of recovery, And I always say this. I say that, what I think about it when all the hospitals that I've been in, and what's the use in Narcaning him? He's just going to be back, later on this week. Why are we even doing this? It's just let him die. It's one less person we got to worry about. I say that the people that is being said about now stand in front of you to educate you and let you know that recovery is possible, and we're not throwaway kids, and we can't arrest our way out of this problem. And it takes a community to bind together to make a difference, I always like to say. And to be here today, again, is nothing short of a miracle. And I want to thank you, Dr. Brummett, and the University of Michigan and Harvard University for allowing me the opportunity to stand up in here amongst these amazing list of speakers with credentials about this long, and and to let you know that this is what the face of addiction looks like nowadays, and it can happen to anybody at any time. And the fact that a song was written about me, it's the first time I've heard it, so it's going to be I'm already getting and feeling it inside. And so with that being said, I want to thank you for having me, and thanks for being here, and thanks for letting me share.